June 26, 2020, 6:38 in the morning. A black armored BMW X5 moves down the middle lane of Paseo de la Reforma. Inside sits a 44-year-old man in a dark suit, checking his phone. Outside, Mexico City is barely waking up. Traffic is still light. 6:38. The first impact slams into the hood. The driver brakes on instinct. Fatal mistake. Because what comes next isn't a robbery. It's a military-style execution. 3 white SUVs with no plates burst out from side streets. One takes the front, one locks in behind, one slides up alongside. A perfect tactical blockade. The windows drop at the same time, and then hell begins. AR-15s and AK-47s open fire from 6 different positions. The sound is deafening, like fireworks and thunder happening at once. Shell casings ricochet off the asphalt, turning the street into a rainstorm of metal. 414 bullets in 180 seconds, more than 2 bullets per second. Inside the BMW, the man throws himself down onto the floor of the vehicle. He feels every hit like a hammer striking a giant bell. The armor holds, the windows barely crack, spiderwebbing across the glass. The roof dents. One round partly pierces the rear door, then stops in the inner Kevlar layer. Outside in the escort vehicles, 3 men fight for their lives. Edgar Giovanni Aborto Avila, 38 years old, father of 2 little girls, 14 years on the force, tries to step out of his patrol unit to return fire. He takes 4 rounds to the torso before his feet even touch the ground. He drops to his knees, still trying to bring his weapon up. A 5th shot tears through his neck. He collapses against the door of his vehicle, leaving a streak of blood on the white metal. Luis Alfonso Hernandez Bravo, 28 years old, newly married, only 3 months into fatherhood, fires 11 shots through his window before a burst catches him. 12 impacts, 3 to the head. He dies instantly, eyes open, hands still on the trigger. Everest Russ Gil Carrizales, 29, the youngest on the team, does something only someone trained in executive protection would do. He abandons cover and tries to reach his boss's SUV. He runs crouched through the crossfire. He almost makes it. He's 2 meters away when 9 bullets tear into his back and legs. He goes face down on the pavement, fingers stretched toward the BMW door, like he's still trying to finish the mission. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the gunfire stops. The white SUVs accelerate and vanish into the morning traffic. They leave behind 200 empty casings glittering under the rising sun, 3 bodies and a vehicle that's shredded on the outside, but still intact within. The BMW's rear door opens. A bloodied man steps out, wounded in the shoulder and left leg. He staggers toward his fallen escorts. He drops to his knees beside Ever, checks for a pulse. There's nothing. The man who survived those 414 bullets is named Omar García Harfuch, Secretary of Security for Mexico City. But that day, they weren't trying to kill a secretary. They were trying to assassinate a surname that has spent 56 years soaked in blood, betrayals, and state secrets. Because Omar is the grandson of the general of Tlatelolco, the son of the most feared political police chief Mexico ever had, the brother of a man executed for ties to drug trafficking. Bystanders described the scene as a war zone right there on Reforma. A 47-second video started circulating in police group chats, showing the level of destruction. The investigation revealed the hitmen had studied Omar's route for 3 weeks. They had his exact schedules. They knew which vehicles he used, which escorts rode with him, even which seat he sat in. Someone had given them inside information. For weeks after, Omar trusted no one. He replaced his entire team. He fired drivers who'd been with him for years, because in the days that followed he received 47 direct threats to phone numbers nobody was supposed to know, messages to encrypted lines, and an envelope containing 3 .50 caliber bullets showed up at his residence despite cameras, security, and checkpoints. Someone on the inside was handing him over almost like they wanted to prove it. We can reach you anywhere. A surname that began in a student massacre in 1968, passed through the torture basements of the Federal Security Directorate, got stained on clandestine runways where planes loaded with cocaine landed, and ended up written in a notebook seized from the men accused of disappearing 43 student teachers. In this video, you're going to see the secret document Harfuch's grandfather wrote before he died, a manuscript where he details the military betrayal that turned him into the butcher of Tlatelolco. That document was hidden for 20 years, and when it finally became public, it revealed names that still hold power today. You'll see how the complete file on his father, Javier Garcia Paniagua, director of the DFS, mysteriously vanished from the National Archives in 2024. Someone with access to national security erased it, and when you understand who could have done that, you'll understand why Omar lives the way he lives, and you'll understand the notebook. A small black pocket notebook seized from Guerreros Unidos. On page 7, a name appears. Garcia Harfuch listed, alongside people tied to the disappearance of the 43 students from Ayotzinapa. This is the story of 4 generations, one surname, one curse, and the man who, in 2024, controls the security of all Mexico. Let's rewind 52 years. October 1968. Mexico City is a pressure cooker ready to explode. Hundreds of thousands of students have been in the streets for months. They're asking for democracy, freedom of speech, an end to police repression. The government of Gustavo Díaz Ordaz is furious. The Olympics begin in 10 days. The whole world is watching Mexico. Díaz Ordaz isn't going to let a student movement ruin the image he's built. He gives the order. Crush the movement by any means necessary. The man tasked with carrying it out is a 54-year-old general, a veteran of World War II, where he fought with Mexico's Squadron 201. Stone face, absolute military discipline, unbreakable loyalty to the system. His name is Marcelino García Barragán, Secretary of National Defense, the grandfather. García Barragán isn't cruel by nature. People who knew him described him as a professional soldier, strict, yes, but even correct in how he treated others. But he has an iron code. When the president gives an order, you execute it. No questions, no hesitation. That blind loyalty will destroy him. October 31st, 1968. García Barragán receives the president's direct order in a private meeting at Los Pinos. Luis Echeverría is there, Secretary of the Interior. So is General Luis Gutiérrez Oropesa, head of the Presidential Guard. The order is clear. Disperse the demonstration the next day in Tlatelolco. Use whatever force is necessary. There can't be protests during the Olympics. García Barragán nods. He starts planning a military operation, but there's something they don't tell him. There's a second operation, a parallel operation he doesn't control, an operation that will turn a dispersal into a massacre. October the 2nd, 5:01 p.m., García Barragán deploys 5,000 soldiers around the Plaza of the Three Cultures in Tlatelolco. Tanks, armored vehicles, full infantry. It's a massive show of force designed to intimidate, to disperse, not to kill. He has given strict orders to his commanders. Disperse the crowd, avoid casualties if possible, only fire if you're attacked first. But while his troops take position, another group is already in place. The Olympia Battalion, a paramilitary elite unit made up of officers from the Presidential Guard and agents from the DFS. They're dressed in civilian clothes, wearing white gloves on their left hand to identify each other, armed with pistols and sniper rifles. García Barragán doesn't control them. He doesn't know exactly how many there are. He doesn't know where they're positioned. That's his fatal mistake. 6:10 p.m. The plaza is packed, 10,000 people, maybe more. Students, professors, families with children. The atmosphere is tense but peaceful. Speakers take turns on the balcony of the Chihuahua building, and then suddenly, 2 green flares cut through the dusk sky. It's the signal, but not García Barragán's signal. It's the Olympia Battalion's signal. Snipers posted in surrounding buildings open fire. They don't shoot into the crowd first. They shoot at García Barragán's soldiers. 3 soldiers go down wounded in the first 10 seconds. Army officers spin toward the plaza, confused. They think the shots are coming from there. They think the students are armed. They think it's an attack on the troops, and they return fire. That's the trap. Olympia snipers fire from the buildings at both sides, into the unarmed crowd and into the soldiers, creating crossfire where nobody understands who's shooting at whom. Chaos is instant. García Barragán's troops, believing they're under student attack, open fire into the plaza. Machine guns, automatic rifles, indiscriminate shooting. People run in panic. There's no exit. The army blocks all the streets. It's a death trap. For 3 hours, the shooting continues. Bodies pile up on the pavement. Blood runs down the steps of the buildings. The screaming is unbearable. From his command post, Garcia Barragan receives contradictory reports. We're being shot from the buildings. The students have weapons. There are snipers. He tries to order a ceasefire, but the chaos is too big. At 9 p.m., he finally gets control of his troops. Silence falls over Tlatelolco, and then he sees it. Hundreds of bodies, pools of blood, shoes abandoned in the dark, school backpacks, the pavement covered in shell casings and dark stains. Garcia Barragan walks among the dead with a face carved from stone. One of his officers approaches him. "My general, we found casings from weapons that aren't ours, calibers the army doesn't use." Garcia Barragan looks at him, and in that moment, he understands. It was a setup. The snipers weren't students. They were presidential guard. They used him to create the perfect massacre. He became the visible executioner. They stayed in the shadows. All night long, military trucks load the bodies. They don't take them to hospitals. They take them to military camp number 1. Some are buried in mass graves, others are incinerated. The official death toll, 43. The real number, between 300 and 400. But no one will ever know for sure because the bodies disappeared. Garcia Barragan returns home at dawn. His uniform is immaculate. His face is expressionless. But inside, something has broken. He has realized his blind loyalty turned him into the tool of a betrayal, and that his surname would be stained forever. The days that follow are torture for Garcia Barragan. The international press condemns Mexico. Images of the massacre circle the world. All accusations point to the army, to General Garcia Barragan. But he can't defend himself. He can't say he was betrayed. He can't reveal that the Olympia Battalion fired on his own soldiers. Because that's the rule of the system. Institutional loyalty is above the truth. So he does something that defines the rest of his life. He stays silent. He accepts public blame. He becomes the perfect scapegoat. But in private, he begins to write a detailed document, page after page describing exactly what happened, the names of the Presidential Guard officers who commanded the Olympia Battalion, the orders he received versus the orders others executed, the full betrayal. He tells his family, "This document will be published when I die, not before. History will know the truth." Garcia Barragan remains Secretary of Defense until 1970, then retires. He lives in 9 more years in relative isolation. He never speaks publicly about Tlatelolco. He never gives interviews. He never tries to clear his name. He dies on August 29, 1979, in his home in Mexico City. He is 65. His last wish, that his manuscript be preserved and published 2 decades after his death. His family follows through. In 1999, 20 years later, the document becomes public. 47 typewritten pages. It describes the Tlatelolco trap with military precision. It names Luis Gutierrez Oropesa, head of the Presidential Guard, as the coordinator of the Olympia Battalion. It names Luis Echeverria as the political architect of the covert operation, but by then it's too late. Echeverria was president of Mexico from 1970 to 1976. Gutierrez Oropesa died in 1975 without ever facing charges. The responsible men lived and died untouched, and the Garcia surname remained marked as the family of the general of the massacre. Marcelino Garcia Barragan had several children. One of them was named Javier Garcia Paniagua. And that son decided that if the surname was already stained, he might as well use it to accumulate power. Real power, dark power, power without limits. 1978, Javier Garcia Paniagua is 48 years old when he is appointed director of the Federal Security Directorate. If you didn't live through those years, let me explain what the DFS really was. Imagine an institution that combined intelligence, political police, and covert operations without congressional oversight, without audits, without accountability to anyone except the president. Now imagine that institution has the authority to detain, interrogate, torture, and disappear anyone considered a threat to national security. No warrant, no lawyers, no phone calls. That was the DFS, and Javier Garcia Paniagua turned it into his personal kingdom. Its headquarters were in a 4-story building at Morelia 8 in the Roma neighborhood. From the outside, it looked like a normal administrative building gray, discreet, no visible signage. But in the basement, there was something that should not exist in any country that calls itself a democracy. Isolation cells, interrogation rooms with metal tables bolted to the floor, leather straps to immobilize arms and legs, car batteries connected to cables with clamps, containers of water mixed with lime, soundproof rooms. Miguel Nazar Haro, operational deputy director of the DFS, worked directly under Garcia Paniagua. Cold, methodical. A man said to have studied interrogation techniques with the CIA in the United States. Together, they perfected what they called information extraction methods. And hold on, because what happened in those basements is something almost nobody dares to tell all the way through. Survivors describe methods designed not to kill, but to break the mind before the body. Drowning with carbonated water, measured electric shocks, sleep deprivation for weeks with constant lights and sound. Mock executions where they fired next to the heads of blindfolded detainees. And the worst part wasn't only what they did. It was that Javier Garcia Paniagua signed off on everything from above. And worse than that, Garcia Paniagua personally supervised some interrogations. He liked being present. One former collaborator, who asked to remain anonymous years later, described him like this: Director Paniagua enjoyed psychological power, not necessarily physical violence for its own sake. What he liked was seeing the exact moment a person broke when they understood there was no escape. That moment when hope went out in their eyes, that's what fascinated him. Between 1978 and 1982, the DFS under Garcia Paniagua processed hundreds of people. Guerrillas, yes, but also inconvenient journalists, activists, political opponents, union leaders, anyone the system considered problematic. Many of them never walked out of Morelia 8. They became the disappeared. But the DFS wasn't only dedicated to political repression, it also ran another business, one far more lucrative: protection for drug trafficking. And this is where the story gets even darker. Declassified documents from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration reveal something chilling. In multiple reports between 1979 and 1982, American agents identified Javier Garcia Paniagua as a high-level protector of the Guadalajara cartel. In a report dated March 15, 1981, a DEA agent writes verbatim, Javier Garcia Paniagua, director of the DFS, functions as a narco-senator. He protects routes, provides political shielding, and eliminates competition. Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, known as El Jefe de Jefes, the founder of the Guadalajara cartel, operated under direct protection from the DFS. Rafael Caro Quintero, who years later would kidnap and torture DEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena to death, carried an official DFS credential signed by Javier Garcia Paniagua himself. Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo, Don Neto, another cartel leader, met regularly with DFS commanders to coordinate operations. What kind of operations? Eliminating independent traffickers who refused to pay for protection. The DFS didn't fight drug trafficking, it regulated it. It turned it into a controlled monopoly, and Garcia Paniagua collected. Protected witnesses later testified that Garcia Paniagua received suitcases filled with cash. Monthly deliveries, hundreds of thousands of dollars that never appeared on any asset declaration. He bought properties through front men, held accounts abroad, and owned a heavily guarded residence in Cuernavaca that looked more like a fortress than a home. Absolute power produces two things: arrogance and vulnerability. And by 1982, Javier Garcia Paniagua was at the peak of both. That year, President José López Portillo had to perform el dedazo, publicly point to his chosen successor, the next president of Mexico. Everything pointed to Garcia Paniagua. He controlled security. He had the military surname that gave legitimacy. He had connections at every level of power. He had money. And he had fear planted deep enough in enough people that no one dared challenge him. Political betting pools had him as the favorite. Then something happened that no one expected. September 25th, 1982, López Portillo gives the dedazo and names Miguel de la Madrid Hurtado, not Garcia Paniagua. Javier Garcia Paniagua is in his office at Morelia 8 when he gets the news. Witnesses say his face showed no emotion. He simply nodded, dismissed the messenger, and then smashed his desk to pieces with his fists. No one ever knew for sure why Lopez Portillo discarded him. Theories exploded. Some say the United States intervened, that the CIA had a devastating file on his drug ties and threatened to leak it if he became president. Others say the business elite vetoed him, afraid of an unpredictable and violent man controlling the country. Still others say it was the army, that the generals didn't want the son of the general of Tlatelolco in Los Pinos, that it was too painful a reminder. What we do know is that Javier García Paniagua never got over that rejection. He left the DFS in December 1982 when De La Madrid took office. He briefly became a senator, but his real power was gone. He withdrew to Cuernavaca, reduced public appearances, refused all interviews, and became a political ghost. For 16 years from 1982 until his death in 1998, he lived carrying secrets that could have brought down entire governments. Secrets about Tlatelolco, secrets about the dirty war, secrets about drug traffickers who later became the most powerful men in Mexico, secrets about politicians who reached the presidency. But he never spoke. He died on April 25, 1998, of a heart attack. He was 68 years old. He wrote no memoirs, gave no confessional interviews, left no documents like his father had. He took everything to the grave. But something strange happened 26 years later. A team of researchers is preparing a documentary on Mexico's dirty war. They request access to DFS archives. Formally, they ask the Ministry of the Interior for the file on Javier García Paniagua. The official response, the file is not available. They insist. They file transparency appeals. Second response, the file is classified for national security reasons. But an anonymous official tells them something far more disturbing. It's not classified, it's gone. Someone physically removed it from the archives. There's no digital record, no copies. It was erased. Who has the power to make national security files disappear in 2024? And why now? What did that file contain that's still dangerous 26 years after García Paniagua's death? Hold on to that question. We'll come back to it. Because while Javier García Paniagua was building his empire in the shadows, he was also raising a fractured family. He had several children, some with his official wife, others from extramarital relationships. One of those unacknowledged sons was named Javier García Morales. He was Omar García Harfuch's blood half-brother, and his fate would be the darkest of all. The 1990s, Javier García Morales presents himself as a businessman. Officially, he runs tourism ventures in Sinaloa hotels, restaurants, real estate. He lives in a seaside mansion in Culiacan, drives the latest model SUVs, wears Italian suits, socializes with local politicians at elite events. From the outside, he's the successful son of a powerful family that learned how to diversify its influence. But unofficially, his name starts showing up where it shouldn't. U.S. intelligence reports place him in meetings with Amado Carrillo Fuentes, El Señor de los Cielos, the most powerful drug trafficker in Mexico during the 1990s. Witnesses describe him at clandestine airstrips in the mountains of Sinaloa runways, where Boeing 727s loaded with cocaine landed from Colombia. A pilot who worked for the Juarez cartel later testified under witness protection. Javier was the link to the military. When big operations were coming, he warned us days in advance. When we needed a heavy shipment to pass, he coordinated the permits. He never touched the product directly, but he moved the pieces so the drugs flowed without obstacles. His name appears in investigations into links between traffickers and Mexican army generals as an intermediary, a facilitator, a man who inherited something more valuable than money. He inherited his father's contact notebook, because that is the true Garcia inheritance, not properties, not bank accounts. Names, phone numbers of military officers who look the other way when it's convenient, commanders who accept monthly bribes, routes the federal police forget to patrol, judges who sign release orders without questions, prosecutors who lose files at exactly the right moment. That notebook is worth more than any fortune. And Javier García Morales inherited it intact with his father's annotations, with his own updates, with new names from a younger generation of corrupt officials. The family pattern continues with surgical precision. His grandfather controlled the military force that massacred students in Tlatelolco. His father managed drug traffickers from the basements of the political police. And he, Javier Garcia Morales, managed drug trafficking through the legitimate businesses of Sinaloa's tourism industry. Everything stayed in the family. Everything stayed in the shadows of the same system. Everything operated with the Garcia surname as a master key that opened doors sealed shut to everyone else. In Sinaloa, people knew who he was, what he represented, who he protected, but nobody said it out loud. Because in Sinaloa, talking too much is the fastest way to disappear. But the drug world is an ecosystem without forgiveness, without permanent loyalties, without surnames that protect you once you stop being useful. Only bullets when you become more risk than benefit. In 2004, something shifts in the air in Sinaloa. Whispers circulate in expensive restaurants. Stories pass quietly among cartel operators. Some say Javier fell out with powerful partners, that he held back money from a shipment that wasn't his, that he tried to run side deals without approval. Others tell a different version, that he simply knew too much, that his direct connection to the old DFS guard made him a devastating potential witness, a man who, if he ever decided to cooperate with U.S. authorities, could destroy entire political careers with a single statement, a walking risk, a ticking bomb. By January 2005, people close to him notice changes. Javier increases his personal security. He no longer travels with a single driver. Now it's 3 armored escort vehicles, front and back. He constantly changes routes, drastically reduces public appearances. Close friends say he looked nervous, always checking over his shoulder, and he had started asking questions about U.S. witness protection programs. He knew something was coming. He could feel it, but he couldn't escape. Because the Garcia surname carries a generational debt to violence, and February 2005 is when that debt is collected. February 23, 2005, Javier Garcia Morales leaves a business meeting in Tepamis, Sinaloa. It's 7:45 p.m. He gets into his armored Suburban and starts the engine. 2 motorcycles pull up on either side. The gunmen draw 9mm pistols and AKs and open fire. 18 bullets punch through the vehicle's partial armor. The windshield explodes. Metal tears open. Javier Garcia Morales dies instantly. The shooters accelerate and disappear into highway traffic, leaving behind a scene the local press describes as a professional execution. The official investigation concludes, a violent robbery gone wrong. No one in Sinaloa believes that. Everyone knows it was a settling of accounts, an ordered execution, a message. A message to whom? Maybe to other members of the Garcia family. Maybe to Omar himself, who in 2005 was already building his career in security forces. The message was clear. The surname doesn't protect you. We can reach anyone. Javier Garcia Morales is buried quietly. Little press, few flowers. His case remains officially unsolved. Unofficially, everyone knows who ordered it, but no one will ever say it out loud. Because in Sinaloa, talking about cartel executions is signing your own death sentence. The Garcia surname is marked by blood once again. 3 generations, 3 lives stained by violence, betrayal, and secrets, and then the 4th generation is born. Omar. Omar García Harfuch is born into a family fractured by power and fear. His father, Javier García Paniagua, is an ascending political figure who, in just 2 years, will control the most feared institution in Mexico. His mother comes from another family with deep political connections. Omar grows up in guarded residences, with bodyguards for as long as he can remember, with the Garcia surname as both blessing and curse, because that surname opens doors locked shut for others, but it also draws looks, whispers when he enters a room, awkward silences when someone mentions Tlatelolco or the DFS. He grows up knowing who his grandfather Marcelino was, the general of the massacre. He grows up knowing what his father does in the basements of Morelia 8, even if nobody ever says it out loud at family dinners. And he grows up asking himself which path he'll take. Will he repeat the pattern or break it? At 18 in 1994, Omar makes the most important decision of his life. He enters the heroic military college. He doesn't study law like politicians who chase power through Congress. He doesn't go into business like his half-brother Javier in Sinaloa. He chooses the uniform, the army, like his grandfather. Calculated or instinctive, probably both. The military college forges him with brutal discipline. Wake-ups at 5 a.m., marches under the sun, physical training to exhaustion, absolute hierarchy. He graduates in 1998 with academic and military honors. That same year, his father dies. Javier Garcia Paniagua suffers a massive heart attack on April 25, 1998. He is 68 years old. He takes his secrets intact to the grave. Omar attends the funeral. He watches politicians discreetly avoid him. Old generals salute him with respect, but with calculated distance. And there he understands something fundamental. The Garcia surname is a permanent label, and he must decide what he will do with it. Then his real strategy begins. He specializes aggressively. He attends the Superior War School, where he studies advanced military strategy. The Military Intelligence School, where he learns threat analysis, counterintelligence, and covert operations. In 2003, he travels to Colombia for a 6-month course on counter-narcotics tactics, learning from officers who have spent decades fighting the continent's most violent cartels. In 2005, he trains for 3 months in the United States in counterinsurgency and special operations. American instructors note his ability for tactical analysis and decision-making under pressure. By 2008, Omar has an impeccable resume, trained in 3 countries, specialized in counter-narcotics, experienced in military intelligence, ready for the move that will define his career. That year, he transitions from the Army to the Federal Police. It's an unusual move. Most elite military officers stay in the armed forces, but Omar sees something others don't. In Mexico, police power can be more visible and more media-driven than military power. And he needs visibility. He needs to build a public image that contradicts his father's legacy. His rise in the federal police is meteoric. 2012, intelligence coordinator of the federal police. He leads operations against Los Zetas, captures key operators. His name starts appearing in newspapers. 2016, National Anti-Kidnapping Commissioner. He dismantles 23 kidnapping rings in 2 years. Statistics improve. The media presents him as the efficient cop. 2019, Secretary of Security of Mexico City, the most visible public security post in the country after the federal level. 9 million residents under his responsibility. The strategy is perfect. Build the exact opposite image of his father. Where Javier Garcia Paniagua operated in total secrecy, Omar operates through weekly press conferences. Where his father avoided cameras, Omar seeks constant media exposure. Where his father ran torture chambers in windowless basements, Omar speaks publicly about rule of law, human rights, and community policing. It's a brilliant strategy of surname redemption. And it works. The media calls him the super cop, the man who takes on the cartels, the different Garcia. But then, in 2014, the Garcia surname reappears in the worst possible place. September 26, 2014. Iguala, Guerrero. 43 students from the Ayotzinapa Rural Teachers College are kidnapped by municipal police, working directly for the Guerreros Unidos cartel. Their buses are intercepted at multiple points across the city. The students are forced off at gunpoint, beaten, loaded into patrol cars, and taken to unknown locations. They are never seen again. 6 people are murdered that night in the streets of Iguala. 3 of them students. 3 civilians who were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. It becomes the worst human rights crisis of President Enrique Peña Nieto's administration. And what comes next is almost as serious as the crime itself. The initial investigation is a disaster full of contradictions, manipulated evidence, and obviously fabricated testimonies. The federal government tries to sell an impossible version of events, that the students were taken to the Cocula landfill, murdered there, and their bodies burned for 15 hours using tires and gasoline. International experts from the interdisciplinary group of independent experts review the evidence and prove it's scientifically impossible. The temperatures required to completely incinerate 43 bodies cannot be reached that way. There aren't enough bone remains. The government's so-called historical truth is a constructed lie. And then the question no one wants to answer begins to surface. If the government lied about how they died, what else is it hiding? Who else was involved? How far does the complicity go? Years later, in 2022, under a new administration, a Truth Commission for Ayotzinapa is created. For the first time, it gains access to documents that had been blocked, hidden, or lost for nearly a decade. Entire boxes of evidence that no one had reviewed. Seized computers that were never analyzed. And notebooks. Small notebooks the members of Guerreros Unidos used to coordinate. Among those documents is something no one expected to find. A small black pocket notebook seized during an operation against Guerreros Unidos in March 2015, 6 months after the disappearance. Cartel members used it to write down names, useful contacts, people who attended coordination meetings with state and federal authorities. The commission assigns 3 investigators to review every single page. They're looking for politicians, military names, police officers who may have been colluding. Page 1. Names of mayors from municipalities in Guerrero. Page 2. Municipal police from Iguala and Cocula. Page 3. Low-level state officials. Page 46. Logistics contacts, routes, phone numbers. And then they reach page 7. Written by hand in blue ink is a surname that should not be there. García Harfuch. It doesn't say Omar, just the surname. But in Mexico, that surname can only mean one thing. On that same page are other names. Felipe Rodriguez Salgado, municipal police officer from Iguala, later accused of direct involvement in the kidnapping. Alejandro Lara Garcia, Guerrero State Police linked to Guerreros Unidos. Cesar Nava Gonzalez, commander of the investigative police, who mysteriously disappeared in 2016. The surname García Harfuch appears on that list alongside confirmed criminals. When the commission's investigators realize it, the room goes silent. Everyone knows who Omar García Harfuch is by then. In 2022, he's already a national figure, the police chief, who survived 414 bullets, the strongman of Capitol Security. So what is his surname doing in a cartel notebook tied to the disappearance of the 43? The commission digs deeper. They discover that Omar García Harfuch was in Guerrero in September 2014 as part of federal anti-narcotics operations. He attended security coordination meetings where some of the police officers who would later participate in the disappearance were present. Does that mean he participated? There's no direct evidence. Does it mean he knew what was going to happen? There's no proof of that either. But his surname is in that notebook. And in Mexico, appearing in cartel documents is never a coincidence. Years later, in 2019, internal DEA reports mention him as a person of interest in investigations into links between federal police and the Sinaloa cartel. No charges, no public evidence. But the mentions exist. Is Omar García Harfuch guilty of anything? Honestly, I don't know. There's no conclusive proof, but there is a generational pattern that's impossible to ignore. His grandfather carried the blame for Tlatelolco, a massacre he didn't design, but did execute. His father ran the DFS and protected traffickers for years. His half-brother was executed for cartel ties, and now his surname appears in documents related to Ayotzinapa and DEA investigations. 4 generations, 1 surname, 1 curse. But then something happens that changes everything. Something that turns Omar into a victim and forces many to ask a dangerous question. Did the cartels try to kill him because he was corrupt? Or because he was incorruptible? June 26, 2020. Let's go back to the beginning now with full context. 6:38 a.m., Paseo de la Reforma. Omar García Harfuch is on his way to work. He's Secretary of Security for Mexico City. He has implemented aggressive operations against the Jalisco New Generation cartel. He's arrested key operators, dismantled cells, seized drugs and weapons. The CJNG is not happy. The ambush is perfectly planned. 3 vehicles, 6 shooters, high-powered weapons, a blocked escape, 414 bullets, 3 escorts dead. Omar survives thanks to the armor of his vehicle, but also because of something else. If the CJNG had wanted to guarantee his death, they would have used explosives, grenades, a car bomb. 414 bullets against armored steel is a message, not a guaranteed execution. A message that says, we can reach you. We know your route. We killed your men. Next time, we won't miss. Hours later, from his hospital bed, wounded in the shoulder and leg, Omar does something no one expects. He gives a press conference. He stands in front of cameras with his left arm bandaged, face tight, jaw clenched, and says something that freezes the room. It was the Jalisco New Generation cartel. They have a name and a face, and they will pay for it. Total silence. Journalists exchange looks because what Omar just did is something almost no Mexican official ever does. He named the cartel that tried to kill him. Mayors don't do that. Governors don't do that. Even defense secretaries avoid naming cartels directly because doing so usually means signing your own death warrant. Cartels don't forgive public humiliation. They don't forgive being named out loud in front of the world, but Omar does it anyway. And he doesn't just name them, he declares open war. In the weeks that follow, Mexico City's security forces launch aggressive operations against the CJNG. Arrests, seizures, entire cells dismantled. It's an unprecedented response, and the cartel responds in its own way. In July 2020, banners appear on bridges across Mexico City with direct threats. Harfuch, next time we'll take you with us. In August, gunmen attempt to ambush two of his commanders. One survives, one doesn't. In September, a vehicle is found abandoned near one of Omar's known residences. Inside, police uniforms, long guns, and a detailed attack plan. The war is real, and Omar lives as if every day could be his last. So why does he stay? Why doesn't he ask to be removed? Why doesn't he accept a diplomatic post far from Mexico? Why does he remain in the most dangerous position possible? There are two theories. Theory one, he's genuinely brave. He confronts organized crime out of conviction. The attack didn't break him, it hardened him. He decided he wouldn't live in fear, that he wouldn't allow the Garcia surname to remain synonymous with corruption. Theory two, he has structural protection. Deep networks inside the state that protect him because he knows too much. Information inherited from his father's archives. Documents he could release if anything happened to him. Life insurance in the form of compromising files on current politicians, just like his grandfather with the Tlatelolco manuscript, just like his father with the secrets of the DFS. No one knows which theory is correct. Maybe both contain some truth. What we do know for sure is that after the attack, Omar changed radically. He became more isolated. His security increased to near presidential levels. He no longer travels with 3 escorts, he travels with 15. He never uses the same route twice. He no longer sleeps at home. He rotates between secret residences. And his relationship with his daughters became distant, because Omar knows something his family has learned generation after generation. The Garcia surname is a magnet for violence. Tlatelolco, Morelia Ocho, Tepames, Sinaloa, Paseo de la Reforma. 4 places, 4 bloodbaths, 4 generations of Garcias. And now in 2024, the circle closes in the most disturbing way possible. December 2024. President Claudia Sheinbaum announces her security cabinet. Secretary of Public Security of Mexico, Omar García Harfuch, not of Mexico City, of the entire country. He now controls the National Guard, federal police forces, intelligence systems, coordination with the Army, exactly what his grandfather Marcelino controlled as Secretary of Defense in 1968, exactly what his father Javier controlled through the DFS in 1978. The generational circle is complete. The Garcia dynasty once again controls Mexico's security. And this brings us back to the question we left hanging. Do you remember the disappeared file of Javier Garcia Paniagua? The one that mysteriously vanished in 2024? Who has the power to make national security documents disappear? The Secretary of Public Security. And who holds that position in 2024? Omar García Harfuch. I'm not saying he did it. I have no proof of that. But the timing is impossible to ignore. His father dies in 1998. For 26 years, his file exists in the archives. In 2024, the same year Omar rises to the highest national security post, the file disappears. Was it to protect the surname? To erase evidence? Or just coincidence? I don't know, but that kind of question defines the Garcia family. Questions without answers. Secrets never revealed. Documents that vanish. Truths that die with their owners. Marcelino Garcia Barragan wrote his truth, but published it 20 years after his death, when it no longer mattered. Javier Garcia Paniagua took his truth to the grave. He never spoke, never wrote, never confessed. Javier Garcia Morales died under 18 bullets before he could tell what he knew. And now Omar Garcia Harfuch controls the very archives that could reveal everything. So the question we're all left with is this. Is Omar García Harfuch different? Is he the man who will break the cycle of violence, secrecy, and betrayal that defines his family? Or is he simply the fourth generation of a dynasty built on corpses, vanished documents, and names written in killers' notebooks? He says he's different, that he's building legality and the rule of law. But his grandfather believed he was just following orders in Tlatelolco. His father believed he was protecting national security through the DFS. His brother believed he was just doing business in Sinaloa. Every Garcia believes they're different until the surname catches up with them and pulls them back into the pattern. Omar Garcia Harfuch has two daughters. They carry the Garcia surname. Fifth generation. They grow up with bodyguards. They grow up with fear. They grow up knowing their last name is a sentence. The curse isn't over. Maybe it never will be. Why is it that in Mexico some surnames aren't just names? They're permanent marks, inheritances of blood, destinies written in bullets, disappeared documents, and secrets no one dares to tell. Garcia is one of those surnames. And Omar Garcia Harfuch, survivor of 414 bullets, heir to 3 generations of violence, now controls the security of an entire country. What will he do with that power? Will he break the cycle or repeat it? His family history suggests an answer, but only time will reveal the truth if it's ever revealed at all. Because the Garcias have a tradition. They keep secrets until they no longer matter, or until death sets them free. If this story hit you as hard as it did me while researching it, subscribe to the channel. Next week, we'll reveal something even darker. Newly declassified documents about Luis Echeverria and the children who disappeared during his government. Files hidden for 50 years. Testimonies never heard. Truths the system tried to bury forever. Are you ready to see what power hides? I'll see you in the next video. And remember, official history is not always the real one. Sometimes the truth is in notebooks, in disappeared files, and in surnames that can never escape their past.